and Pittsburgh Penguins. I am James Nichols, and as always, my good pal John Zella is here with me. What's going on, man?
Every time we do this, they go to OT.
I
Every
know
every post game, I'm pretty
it's
sure
yeah,
they
yeah,
go to OT, shootout, multiple rounds. This might have been the shortest shootout, honestly.
yeah, definitely. I'm pretty sure we were going to record, or we did record after the longest shootout that they've had this season. And what did it go, 9 or 10 rounds?
I can't even remember. I'm not a night owl type person, so it's very hard, and especially because it was a 7:30 start. Am I making that up?
Yeah, tonight was a 7:30
Yeah.
start.
So I think that happens quite a bit. It's like a 7:30, 8 o'clock start.
Yeah.
And then we decide, yeah, we should really we're motivated. Of course, at 7:30, you're motivated to do it. And then we get to here, and you're like, yeah, this.
I gotta wake up tomorrow.
I have to wake up tomorrow.
What?
You have an actual commute, though.
What is this?
Yeah, I don't my commute is like from behind me to here, which is very different.
Yeah.
Um, I got in my car yesterday for the first time in like a week. Granted, I was ill, very, very sick. If you remember from the last episode,
Yeah.
um,
How you feeling now? You feeling good?
vertical. I feel like a human. It
Good.
took. I've never been that sick in my life. And it turned out because I said last episode that it wasn't COVID,
Yeah.
and it turned out that it was. If you are not vaccinated, this is not like anything political. Please, I got the boosted. I was horizontal for 24 hours.
Well,
I could not wake. I could not get up vertically. I took the dog out and I was asleep until 5 p.m. Like from
wow.
the night before. Please, it is terrible. Please be safe. Whatever you're doing, please be safe.
Well, I can speak for all of us when I say we're happy to see that you are now vertical, no longer horizontal. John, I wanted to talk real quick about nothing Islander related at the moment, but why this is one of my favorite times of the year, regardless of whether the Islanders will be headed or not headed to the postseason. And it's because I
You get to
really
wear
do.
sleeveless hoodies because it's warm enough to wear sleeveless hoodies. That's
Yes.
absolutely it.
Yes, that's you nailed it. That's what I was gonna
I
say.
really did think that's what you were gonna say.
No, that's not what I was gonna say. It is one of my favorite times of the year because regardless of whether a team is headed to the postseason or not, we do get to see a number of rookie debuts around this time of year. And especially tonight was the debut for Owen Power and Matty Beniers, the number 1 and 2 picks of the NHL draft that just passed last summer. And those two are actually already off to a great start in their career. The Buffalo Sabres just trampled the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think it was a 5-1 ending. And Owen
Wow.
Power was actually a significant he was a significance on the ice tonight. He was involved in a really good play where he broke up a 2-on-1, I believe it was, between I think it was Marner and Matthews, and he broke it up and he just looked fantastic
I
on the
think I
play.
saw something to that effect, like a tweet
Yeah.
go by.
Yeah, so he I think the tweet was like, Owen Power making the NHL look like it's, kindergarten or something like that. And
Incredible.
then not too much later, Matty Beniers gets his first point on a primary assist. A beautiful no-look cross-ice pass to Ryan Donato for the goal, and he gets his first NHL point of his career. So those are just really cool moments that I enjoy seeing, and it's especially interesting that tonight both the first and second pick of the previous draft debuted on the same night. So I just thought that was really cool. Have you seen any debuts recently that you've enjoyed?
I can't recall recently. I did watch the final. I was flipping, well, because of the Islanders, the blowout loss. I'd be lying if I said I watched the entire thing through.
Yeah.
So I did watch the end of the NCAA final
Oh, nice.
between Minnesota and Denver, which turned into midway through the game or a little bit later, its own little kind of blowout loss there where Denver just took over after Minnesota was up 1-0 for going into the third period, I believe.
Yeah.
So that was exciting. You don't get to watch a whole lot of NCAA hockey, so it was really
No.
cool to see that and just a different perspective on the game from ESPN. So it's kind of nice. It's kind of everything stays in the family for hockey for now, which is nice. No, but no, I haven't really seen. I have been trying to watch a little more hockey. I know it's really hard this time of year, but like watch some teams I don't typically watch. Like go out of my way to watch. Like if Anaheim's playing, I forget they were playing somebody the other day.
Yeah.
Just like random games, like just watch Arizona Anaheim. Like watch the game. There might be somebody exciting out there. So I'm kind of in your camp on that, and go watch some young exciting players that might be able to go out there and do some cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I was, just scouring a plethora of games and before the Islanders started, and both, guys like Troy Terry scored his 33rd goal tonight, as did Thompson, and it's just cool to see, these new young players breaking into the league, and just how much talent is now coming into the NHL. New names. We're not saying the same old Crosbys and Ovechkins, and although those are great names to say and watch break more records as time goes on, all that is awesome as well. But it's really cool to see how much more talent there is in the NHL these days. It just seems like there's more skill guys coming in every day, especially guys like Trevor Zegras and those young guys as well. So
Well, there's a whole
um
generation now that grew
yeah,
up watching, like having the internet fully at their disposal,
yeah,
and they're watching not only the NHL guys, Patrick Kane and all these great stick handlers, but they're watching like Pavel Barber
yeah,
and a whole bunch of these other skill guys on the internet. They also have access to all, crazy skill coaches and
yeah,
all this other stuff. But like they're just able to like soak in all these creative players
right,
and playmakers. I think that's what's making this a lot more popular now is,
yeah,
when we were growing up, I don't know, I saw like the Mike Leg goal, the Michigan in the 90s, and that was like the craziest thing I'd ever seen. And we did that until like, I don't know, we tried that all the time.
yeah.
And that was it. It didn't really there wasn't a lot more creativity than that. Like playing roller hockey maybe here and there, but like it really wasn't. That it took a long time for that really to evolve starting at like a young level. And now, yeah, it's absolutely nuts what you're seeing.
Did you happen to see the video of the pulled off fake Michigan from a couple of days ago?
Um I think I did I did see a Michigan in was it the girls high school championship?
Um,
Really well done. I forget. I guess it was against Little Caesars. I can't remember, but no,
I
I didn't.
think it was I
I
think it
think I
was a
did see that.
college game, and what happened was that there was a player behind the net who attempts the Michigan but doesn't bring the puck with him, and a second skater comes around, grabs the puck, and scores on a wraparound. Really cool. He draws the defenders and the goalie's attention to one side of the net, and the second skater scores on the other side. I thought that was such a creative play, and you're only going to see more creativity from here. So
Yeah,
these guys are going to continue to skill it up, and we're going to eat it up and love it, and we're not going to bash on it because this is the game now, and it's just good for the game to
hundred
continue to
percent.
grow.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. No one should sit there and be like, someone should get punched in the mouth if they're gonna be good, and I suck. It's like, yeah, that's not how things work.
Yeah,
It's a very odd take, but
yeah, definitely odd. But on an Islander related note, they've gone 2-1 since our last episode. A win against Carolina Friday, a pretty tough loss against St. Louis on Saturday, and then tonight they beat the Pittsburgh Penguins 5-4 in a shootout. Bit of an up and down game, not their best performance, but also not their worst. Um, Want to start off by talking about Ilya Sorokin. I mean, he comes back from injury. He wins a huge game against, or then huge game against Carolina, before a tough weekend where the Capitals took 2 games, got 4 points. and really just solidified their most likely destination of being playoff bound. However, it was a big game for the Islanders in that moment. They won 2-1, largely on the back of Ilya Sorokin. His first game back from injury, he looks fantastic. And then tonight, he comes in and makes a career high 43 saves. He had a little bit of an issue with his rebounds tonight, I thought. I wonder if it has something to do and if maybe he's still a little bit shaken up with his injury that had him out previously. Because there was also a couple of scary moments tonight too, where he took a few shots to the mask or up high. And then there was another one that he took a puck to the arm and it seemingly stung him a little bit. So I'm almost wincing every time shots go in the direction of Sorokin lately, not because I'm worried he's not going to save it, but because I'm more worried that is something going on with him despite him making 43 saves tonight. It just seems like he's a little uncomfortable body-wise in the
He
crease.
might be. I mean, it's like when you come back from any kind of injury, and goalies especially, you're bound to get injured by the puck at some point. It's just going to hit you in a spot where you don't have any protection, or it's only a thin layer. But with any injury that you go through when you play any sport, really, you're a little gun shy on the other side. It
Yeah.
is a little uncomfortable to get that feeling back, and um, and eventually forget about being hurt until the next time you get hurt. So I think that's a little hard to kind of get over mentally,
Yeah.
as when you're playing sport, probably at any level. Um, he seemed generally okay. I mean, there are some shots that are going to be a little uncomfortable, but um, yeah, I heard Brendan Burke on the call when he said that he looked a little uncomfortable. He took the shot a little high in the chest, or kind of maybe near the shoulder or something like that. But he generally seems fine.
Yeah, I think he will be okay. Another milestone in his career with his career high at 43 saves makes me think now, we constantly talk about what qualifies a goaltender for Vezina nomination. Listen, is he going to win the Vezina this year? No, he's not going to. I think Igor Shesterkin probably has that locked. But do you think that Sorokin is a sleeper nominee at least? Should he be considered? I understand he might not have the wins because he at the beginning of the season took the reins, but then after Varlamov came back, he's really split time with him most of the time. Do you think he has an outside chance to at least be a nominee?
I'm I don't know who would put him on the ballot. I think it hurts that the Islanders just in general didn't play well, so that'll just kind of hurt his chances.
Yeah,
Um, it's not a prerequisite to be in the playoffs,
right,
but it kind of is. It's not like a written rule, but it's an unwritten rule. It's the same thing with like the Hart Trophy or these other things where you kind of need to be in it to win it. Wayne Gretzky even said it on the TNT broadcast on one of the games the other day in one of the intermission reports that you have to be. And I don't know that I disagree. I don't know that I agree with it necessarily that you have to be in the playoff conversation to be in a conversation about one of the major awards for the regular season, because it's
right,
about you can be really, really good and the team could be shit. Ziggy Palffy could be the most important player to a team and score 45 goals a season and all this kind of stuff and be considered, even if the Islanders were shit in 1997. Like,
right,
I don't think that I don't know why those things are necessarily mutually exclusive. I understand that you mean more if the team's doing better, I suppose, but it's just about what it means to the team. So as far as the Vezina conversation is concerned, the short answer is no. I think there's just probably too many goalies in front of him, um, that probably played more games. Forget the wins aside, because I think he has a good record. It may just come down to a games played, and as the Islanders do kind of put out a tandem, it's going to be harder and harder. They're going to win Jennings awards. They're going to win different kind of things like that. The Vezina is going to be a tough for an Islander team. Now it does put them in a different position come playoffs, because for whatever reason, a goalie will win it for a very short period of like hot play in the playoffs with the very kind of similar numbers. Granted, it gets a little inflated because it's just 20, 25 games, whatever, closer to 30 games, something like that, mid 20s. So that's where an Islander goalie may win it. But I think it's really hard, especially this season when they're not going to make the playoffs.
I think it's interesting to think about, right? Because you know, Sorokin only has 24 wins. I don't really know how much wins should factor in because it's more of a team stat to me, but he does have the starts as of right now. If you look at his starts compared to the rest, Freddie Anderson's, probably no, actually, Igor Shesterkin is the top guy right now, and he's got 49 starts. And Freddie Anderson has 51 starts. Ilya Sorokin only has 45. It's not that far away. I guess it's more than I thought because of how often the split has been down the road and down the stretch for Sorokin and Varlamov. I expected to see a little bit less when I was looking for the number. Um, but aside from the starts, he's fourth in the NHL in goals against average, second in save percentage, and second in shutouts. It's hard to sit here and say that he's not the most given the situation he's put in, right? He's probably in the hardest situation of any goaltender who will be nominated for the Vezina, and he's performing under that kind of pressure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. It's just I wonder how much that just gets taken into effect and how hard it would be for the writers, for the majority of writers or a lot of writers to see the Islanders like that,
Right.
especially in a season where they're not doing well. They were written
Yeah.
off so long ago. I doubt unless they're playing a major market team like they're like tonight, you might see some Sorokin love.
Yeah.
Or against Carolina, you might see some Sorokin love. But when they're not doing that and or they're losing, which was a lot this season, um, they're just going to get ignored. So I wonder when if it happened enough. I don't think it did,
It's a
which
good
is
point.
disappointing.
Yeah. No, it's a good point, and I don't think that should, his season should go unnoticed. And that's why I raised the question, does he at least even just get the nomination? I understand he's probably not going to win it, but the nomination alone would speak volumes to how good he was in, by the way, just his second season as a goaltender in the NHL, and his first season as a quote unquote starter. Because again, he's got 45 starts this year. He's probably been relied on more often than Varlamov, although Varlamov has been given a bulk of responsibility himself as well.
Yeah, and so if the question is, should he be considered to get nominated? 100%.
Right,
He's had a great season.
right.
Will he realistically? No.
That's probably fair to say.
Yeah, I don't. And I think that's where we have to like separate some things. Sometimes it's really hard to be like, well, he's so good, and we're watching him every single night, and we're comparing him against other goalies, and we see the stats, and it's just not, it's like your own team's prospects. You're gonna value things a lot higher than maybe other teams value your guys. Prospects or guys on your roster.
Right,
We can think, and the conversely that could be true with guys that you don't think are good, and other teams are like, yeah, we love Josh Bailey. It might come out in a few years that this past trade deadline teams are like, Luke, come on, we're gonna give you and they're like, we're like, oh my god, we could have gotten something for him,
right,
like, and it is gonna drive people nuts. But so you never really know how GMs are thinking or different writers writ large anyway enough to get a nomination for something. So um we're sitting on the outside, so it's a lot of just like kind of guessing, and it has to be educated to
yeah.
some as the best that it can be, and keep things realistic.
All right, let's talk about Zach Parise, who had 2 goals tonight, a power play goal and a shorthanded goal First time in his career he's done both in the same game.
It felt like it was
Um,
like 30 seconds apart.
it was pretty close apart, if I'm not mistaken. I'm gonna head over to the score sheet now, but nonetheless, Zach Parise has just by and large been the most consistent Islander um, this season. The goal was almost exactly 2 minutes apart. The goals were almost exactly 2 minutes apart from each other. Not only has he been the most consistent Islander this season, because he's also the, knock on wood, only Islander to have played in every game this year. But he's been the most consistent Islander in terms of giving it 110% every shift. And it took a while, but the other shoe finally dropped. And, now he's up to 13 goals on the season. And the conversation constantly turns back to Zach Parise is the biggest bargain in the NHL right now via his contract. I I like to say that, yeah, that could be true. And I'm not saying he's comparable to this echelon of player. But there are other contracts in the NHL, such as David Pastrnak's and Nathan McKinnon's, who I think are only making $6 million a year, and they're performing at the top percentile of NHL players. However, I do understand the sentiment, right? He's playing fantastic hockey for a 37-year-old veteran who's on a year to year basis contract with the Islanders seemingly at this time. It was a great pickup for the Islanders last summer. It was a great extension for the Islanders at this trade deadline. And it's funny because he's really building chemistry with Matthew Barzal,
Which is scary, and I keep thinking about how you don't want too much success,
right?
especially because it doesn't mean anything at this point.
Right.
You don't want too much success between those two to ruin any kind of potential offseason move. Like he
Right.
just and just before we move too far past it, I don't want to be like I disagree with your other point about like McKinnon and bargain deals. I think the caveat to that is what's their expectation?
Well,
Their
that's what I was
expecta-
gonna say too.
their expectation is to be a freaking all-star, and
Right.
they do that, and they're slightly underpaid, like a Bergeron or some of those guys.
Right.
The issue is that the expectation for Parise was to be a third line guy, and it
Yes.
turned out that he was a catalyst to score some goals, although it took some time next to Barzal.
Technically, he's still a third line guy.
Well, he's not. I mean, on this team, again, we could argue that there's still 3 second lines,
Yes, and he's filling technically the third line left wing role with
which
Barzal and Wallstrom.
which we don't have this in the notes because now you do them, but um we say that I tweeted this the other day, and it was a mix of comments, and I was kind of surprised because I think it came off wrong. So I'll elaborate here. I don't think Barzal had a very good season. I think he's been very disappointing as of late,
I think that's fair.
and I'm in the process of finishing an article about how he needs to evolve. Now, part of that in what I'm writing is that he needs help around him to do that. But the other part is he needs to figure that out. I'm liking um, what he's doing now a lot to what Tavares did for a short period of time when the Islanders were struggling. In that you just watched him wrangle the puck too long. He tried to do too much. He tried to do too much himself, and it didn't lead to things. He's also, I think, Barzal's way too predictable. Last season, he turned into a different player. He was unpredictable. He was shooting the puck more. He became a goal scorer and a playmaker, a true superstar, take your team to the next level player. He's now, granted, there was COVID. I think he was injured for a period of time. He's working out different line mates. I think for as good as Wallstrom isn't just learning the NHL game now on a nightly basis. He now has to learn it at Barzal's speed, which is
Right.
impossible, which is why you don't see them scoring goals, right? They had some success and they were playing well defensively and getting their chances, and they weren't scoring goals. It's because Wallstrom has to learn at that speed. He's got 100 games under his belt, maybe.
Right.
Maybe a little more at this point. Like you're talking about a very small sample size in terms of a career and to reach his potential. All that's to say is Barzal's not exactly surrounded by extreme talent right now, but he's also, even on the power play, overhandling the puck, way too predictable. We're not seeing the same Barzal that we saw even just in the playoffs last year, but really throughout all of last season, where those, that confidence, that swagger, we're not seeing it this season. So he needs to kind of regain that confidence, but really, he needs the help around him to truly evolve into being a superstar. So talk about value, at $7 million, he should be a value. And at this season, it's certainly not. He's just a good player instead of super noticeable on the ice. You should know when Barzal's on the ice. It shouldn't be, oh yeah, he had the puck and he curled and he dumped it or he passed it off.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be it. He's got to be more than that. I notice Parise on the ice every goddamn time. Every time he's on the ice, I know he is. He's working his balls off. I don't see that with Barzal. I haven't in some time. What I tweeted was I don't know the last time I said, "Wow, Barzal had a great game." Like, not a good game. Any player can have a good game for the Islanders, but he had a Barzal good game, a superstar good game, and I really don't know that I'm wrong on that, because someone was like forgetting his game against the Rangers, and I'm like, yeah, he had a good game. That doesn't mean he took it over.
Right. No, it's a fair point. I was just listening to a conversation between Jeff Marek and Kevin Kurz where they brought up a similar point. Is it a Matt Barzell problem or is it a New York Islander problem? And
That's really
Marek,
funny. I want to go listen to that now.
yeah, it was on the
That
Jeff Marek show Friday, Friday's episode,
interesting.
where Marek and Jeff were talking about Doug Wilson. He was retiring from being the Sharks general manager, and then they transitioned into some Islander talk, and the conversation turned to, is it a Matt Barzell problem or an Islander problem? And Marek said, listen, like, the Islanders are very, north and south. Like, they play a north and south game. Matt Barzell is like he's a freelancer, and he plays his best when he can freelance and be unpredictable, like you said, and just fly off the handle out there. And whether
He doesn't have the
he
talent to do that right now. That's the problem.
either he doesn't have
Wallstrom's
the talent, and that's where the questions are still right. Is Wallstrom is obviously paired with Barzell right now to continue to build that relationship with him in the future, but is there enough talent around him to also allow him to do that? The question marks are still in the air. We don't really know.
I literally mean on his line. And the
Right.
more that we watch him and Wallstrom play together, I don't believe that to be the combination that's going to work in the future. It's
We
going to
don't really
take
know yet. I mean, the thing
It's
about
gonna take
Wallstrom,
it's gonna take too long for him to they need if they look, if we had this long-term approach and this was the 2014 Islanders, sure. Yeah, give them all the time they want to figure that out. They need to fucking win. They
right,
need to turn this shit around October 18th, whenever the first day of the first game is next season. They
right.
can't wait. And that's not, if you're gonna get somebody on the opposite wing, I don't know how you just keep waiting for that to truly click.
Right. No, you're right there. They do have to figure it out in the short term. But I think also it's fair to also think about those two as a duo in the long term, both, going to be with the Islanders for the foreseeable future.
I think we're
Um,
shoehorning shit. I should have said that in the when we first started talking about it, with whether it was Palmieri or it was going to be Wallstrom, or if it doesn't work, just fucking abandon it. I don't this doesn't it doesn't need to work. I think there's a misconception is like, oh, they're so good. Why aren't they playing together? It's like, it might just not fucking work. And I don't think it's just time to abandon it. But again, make an honest fucking assessment and stop putting shit on pedestals. Royal you, not you specifically, but I think as a fan base, we're like, oh shit,
No,
they're
right.
so good. Like, why aren't they playing together? I don't get it. And you're like, I don't know. It's just not working. If I was the head coach, I would move it too.
Well,
And
let's
they can be good, quote unquote, analytically all you want. If they're not fucking scoring, you can't just like, guess we gotta wait until they get it in the net. Like, no, no, they're the top fucking line. Figure it out.
Let's talk about Oliver Wahlstrom because he was supposed to be a healthy scratch in tonight's game after a tough one against the Blues on Saturday. He was the extra skater during morning drills this morning. And then a sickness came upon Kiefer Bellows, it seems, and Wallstrom was back in the lineup for warmups. He looked like it didn't. He didn't get a shift in the third period. I believe he sat that entire 20 minutes.
Against
What
the
are you
Blues.
seeing from Wallstrom that's got him in some hot water?
When did he sit? Against the Blues or against the Penguins?
No, tonight against the Penguins,
Tonight.
he didn't get a shift in the third period.
Look, I think it comes back to one of those things where again, I don't believe that he's a first line wing right now. Uh, um, his tenacity isn't always there. Um, I think he's partially still trying to learn that north-south game because because he's a very gifted goal scorer, he's had a little bit of latitude, um, coming into this. He's kind of been able to get his way a little bit, and he's frustrated. It's a lot of it's it's a lot easier to pick out these things now.
Yeah,
It's giveaways, it's unnecessary hits, it's penalties here and there. It's just inconsistent everything. It's hard to pick out something specific at this point, but it leads me to believe that he's not mature enough to be playing next to Matt Barzell, frankly. Um, they're in a tough position considering they don't have a lot of options, but I'm not really worried about line combinations at this point unless it's working. It's good to know like Peugeot and Palmieri. Okay, that's really great to know that that's a pairing that you can stick with. Leah Nelson seemed to have rekindled their magic. Keep them together. Great. Awesome to know
yeah,
that. I would feel the same way about Wallstrom and Barzell if they worked, but it's not. And I don't think the team is ultimately putting him in a position to succeed because he's putting him with somebody that's just above his skill level and experience level. And it's hard to keep up. He's still learning the game and they got to learn it at 100 miles an hour. It's really freaking hard. You
yeah.
don't jump on the highway, learn how to drive. And you just like know how to merge. Like, no, it's gonna take a little bit. Um, and I think on top of that, um, he's got to break some bad habits and learn how to play a little more consistently. So if I'm Barry Trotz, even an easygoing Barry Trotz, I can understand this, but Barry's not easy on these guys. He's really difficult on them. He's going to he's almost like with some guys like taming a wild horse. He's almost got to break them and get him to play a certain way. And you can disagree with it this season because they didn't play well, but there's a lot of evidence, especially in the playoffs, that when they play a certain way,
Yeah,
they were so good. Even
yeah,
in losses, they were so good against really good teams. No excuses.
yeah,
No, you couldn't be like, well, the other team had like 6 injuries. It was like, no, no, no. These were like almost fully healthy teams, and the Islanders went in and did what they had to do. They annihilated the Capitals a couple years ago. Wasn't even close.
yeah.
Wasn't even close. In 5 games. They just took it to him. And you need that kind of discipline. So until he figures that out, it's gonna be tough go for him.
Yeah, I think it's funny because back in March, the question was asked like, what is up with Wallstrom? Why hasn't he been paired with Matthew Barzell yet? And Trotz's comments they were good. He said something along the lines of, you guys are like McDonald's, you want it fast, you want it now. He's like, but don't worry about Wallstrom. He's going to be a good player. He's a good player now, but he's still got things to work on. I really liked those comments because he's not wrong. One of the things that he has a big problem with is he uh doesn't continue on the play after he gets rid of the puck. He kind of puck watches after he gives it up, takes the shot, or passes the puck off, and
He's in
that
weird positions sometimes. I think
sometimes
I'd
he's in.
mentioned
Yeah,
that, like, he's off, and Barzell even did it. He
yeah,
had missed the net on a shot a couple days ago. I'm like, "What the hell? You're a righty," and he was on the right side of the ice. It's like, "What the hell are you standing?" So, like, of course you missed.
yeah.
Like,
Listen,
you weren't in a position. You weren't in a good position. And Wallstrom does the same thing. He's in no man's land, below the hash marks near the corner.
yeah, don't get me wrong. When it works, it really works. There are times where you'll see a beautiful dish from Barzell and a natural release from Wallstrom, and it's quick and it's exhilarating, and you want more of that. But
Inside the
right
dots.
now, right inside the dots, but right now it's not happening as often as it should be. So the chemistry is just not quite there yet. And it was a good point that you said. Maybe it's a little bit too much too fast right now for Wallstrom. Again, he's only 21, maybe 22. He still has room to grow. Is he an NHLer? Yes, sure is. But should he be with Matthew Barzell right now? Maybe not. Maybe sticking with Pajot would have been better off for him. We'll see through the next stretch of what do we got left? Nine-ish games right now.
Yeah,
So
he's played 119, 120 games.
and to be fair, amongst his draft class, he's actually performing pretty well amongst the top
Yeah,
scorers from that draft.
I think points and all that stuff is great, but he should be when you're playing with that kind of talent, you have to figure it out. You have to be able to find a way to cut it. Um, because you shouldn't. My conclusion on all of this is that there's no reason a line with Matthew Barzell on it is not your first line,
Right.
and that's disappointing. And it has everything to do with Parise seems to be doing what he's playing the role of Anders Lee, frankly, and he's doing a damn good job. And in so much as he's when he's scoring when he's being asked, and he's doing all the tough things. You, he's doing exactly what Leo Komarov did. Like, that's the role. I hope that role changes on that line. It needs to, with somebody else is going to be there, or we're all going to be very disappointed with who Lamorello ultimately makes a trade for or signs.
Yeah.
So let's all be prepared for that. I will be one of the first people to say that. A huge grain of salt when we think about who's going to be playing on that left side. It may not be who we're thinking. It often isn't. And that's very scary because they need to change their mindset on that. On
Yeah.
the other side, you have a Wallstrom who's learning, and you need any line with Barzell on it needs to be your first line. There's no excuse.
Yeah. That's 100% true. Real quick before we talk about Kyle Palmieri, we're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsors. Nassman Hockey is brought to you by DraftKings. 2 titles are up for grabs on the stacked UFC 273 fight card. Join the action with DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. New customers can bet $5 on any fighter and get $100 in free bets, win or lose, guaranteed. If Sportsbook isn't available in your state yet, you can still get in on the excitement. Everyone can play for a share of millions in prizes with DraftKings daily fantasy MMA contests. Draft your lineup of fighters while staying under the salary cap and rack up points for strikes, takedowns, and more. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. Best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, use promo code THPN, throw down $5 on UFC 273, and get $100 in free bets no matter what. That's code THPN this Saturday at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. 21 years and older, restrictions apply. All right, so real quick before we cut to break, we were talking about Zach Parise and his market value, and Dom Luchezin updated his player cards. Some of my favorite advanced analytic graphics to visit and observe. Zach Parise's salary is that of $750K plus performance bonuses, yada yada. Estimated $800K right now. His market value that he's performing at is $4.8 million.
I think so.
It's
There's a lot.
unbelievable.
There's a lot to learn. I wouldn't take that direct. That 4 million, whatever that $4 million number is. I wouldn't take that direct because there's definitely some education.
Oh yeah,
There's some like further reading on like how they got there, because some of the players' numbers are like 16 million or 18 million
Oh,
dollars, and you're
Austin
like,
Matthews is at 22 million right now.
yeah. So I
Right.
think it's
I
like,
totally get it.
yeah. So I think maybe I don't know what the like how they not how they get to it necessarily, but like in what universe does that make sense? Or like, so I see them get tweeted out a lot across different teams. Um, but like without the context, like that you need to read.
Yeah.
Hopefully you have an athletic subscription so you could read the rest of it because it's really important. The player card is like super top level information. You really need to figure out like how they
It
get
has a
there and
lot to
all
do
that
with
other
like
shit.
expected goals and such. So
Yeah, things like that, which is, really a hard concept to grasp when you're like, Kyle Palmieri has 1 goal in 29 games. You cannot sit here and tell me
well,
he's a good player when in fact he is. It just needs to go in the net. It's, like it's like we say it all the time, like, oh man, he's just really it's very funny how it's like, well, he's just really unlucky. He's getting a lot of chances, and then you're sitting like, yeah, he has a really low, he's a really high expected goals, and he's like, that doesn't mean anything. It's like you said the same thing. I'm just calling it something different. Like,
right.
please know we said the same thing. So
Well,
it's a little crazy.
speaking of Kyle Palmieri, his player card was actually hilarious to look at today because it was the day where his salary and his market value were equal. He makes $5 million a year. His market value is actually $5.1 million a year. His recent surge of goals has skyrocketed his market value all the way up. I think previously it was something in like the 2 million range. Now it's in the it's 5.1 million. Expected to end the year with 20 goals on the season, 40 points, which given how the year started, is really good. And going back to that game on Friday against Carolina, the Islanders gave up a late goal to the Hurricanes to tie it, and not I don't know 2 minutes later, Kyle Palmieri activates his super dad powers, and that was a hell of a goal that he scored to win the game for the Islanders, man. He really muscled the Hurricanes defender behind the net. I even think he was held on to a little bit and really just found a way to get that free hand back on his stick. And as soon as his fingertips touched his stick, he released the shot and beat Freddie Anderson for the win. And it was a hell of a shot. He picked a corner. That's the Kyle Palmieri the Islanders signed for the next 4 years. And there's a lot of talk about it's easy to do that, quote unquote, under no pressure because they're essentially eliminated from the playoffs. Are you buying that?
No, because he was while they were in contention some time ago, he picked up his game.
Right.
So this isn't just like out of nowhere. So I think that's a little bit different.
Correct.
These are also professionals, the Islanders. Um I think they're playing the same. I don't think they're like I don't really think they're playing they raised their game a little bit to some degree. They did beat some good teams recently, including Carolina.
Right.
Then they follow it up with just a full diaper game. Um, so it's hard to kind of see is their progress. They win a bunch of good games in a row. It's seemingly they have some momentum, and then they just kind of take the wind out of their own sails.
Yeah.
Um, in a different season, maybe I think that it is different to play the role of spoiler. You go out there with a lot less pressure. Your approach changes as a team a little bit. As a coach, you're maybe not loosey goosey, but you're kind of playing with things. You might try some different systems. You might let players do some different things. That doesn't strike me as like a Trotz thing. So I think that they are truly trying um to figure out what they have here. And I think the players know that too, where they can't go out. And Lou managed to trade Boychuk's contract and Ladd's contract
Yeah.
For all we know, he launched Komarov back to the KHL. Um, he got rid of a lot of money. So I'm not worried about him trying to find a way to get money off the books. And I think a lot of these players know that Lou will find a way. Um, there are teams that need to meet the cap floor next season, which is a different horrible problem that we needn't discuss at the moment. So, like, I think they're all playing for their jobs. I have to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think Palmieri knew why he was signed there. He's a local guy, and he needs to play up to that. I think he knows. He came in there to be the first line guy. He had that kind of taken away from him. He was given another opportunity when he kind of came back after, the 29 games and 1 goal and blah blah blah, and the thing we all have heard. And he had to come back and be a different player. And I published an article the other day about how he's thriving in this role, and that's perfectly fine. They need depth. I don't mind paying for a guy like Palmieri to score 20 goals in the third line. I don't give a shit where he scores 20 goals. Whether it was on the first line, the so-called first line, or he played 20 games and was a healthy scratch the rest of the time, and he played 20 games and scored 20 goals. I don't care. That's what we're paying him to do. Be a 40, 50 point guy every single season. I really don't care how it happens. He just needs to do it. And so, but like Palmieri, Pajot, I think the same way. I think a lot of these guys are a little worried. They're looking over their shoulder. Lou went on. He said the same thing a bunch. I have to imagine internally that got around. That conversation happened too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think it's like that ominous threat of like we're evaluating our systems
Yeah.
and who's making all this up. That's really scary,
Yeah.
as just like a regular employee of things, right? So I think that trickles down to the players.
Yeah,
I think it's tough.
it's spot on because when does Lou Lamoriello ever give us insight as to what his plan is going to be, right? And then at the trade deadline, not only does he extend Clutterbuck and Parise, but he goes on to say, "Yeah, the rest of this season is going to be an evaluation, and if one player or another are not part of our future plans via their play for the rest of this year, we will be conducting some quote unquote hockey trades." And those two words, hockey trades, should scare the shit out of that locker room because Lou Lamoriello will not be afraid to shed a contract that he doesn't need anymore or he doesn't see part of the future. So,
And there's been enough change now, right? Like from the first playoff run to the really throughout the 3 playoff runs, there was very incremental changes. This I've said this before, they need to make some moves, especially impact moves. But I have this roster has changed over quite a bit. There's going to be a number of new players. There's going to be a lot of new stuff going on, especially in the back end. Um, it's really time that they have to figure it out. So I don't think that they're sold on the core and the idea and who they need. Some other players on the fringes that are interchangeable or a trade ship, it's a different story. So yeah, I think the players that need to be that are stepping up and playing really super well right now are the ones that are the most motivated because they felt like they may be on the outside looking in come the
yeah,
offseason.
and believe it or not, that's Palmieri, that's Pajot, that's Josh Bailey. Anthony
That's
Beauvillier was there
Anthony
for a little
Beauvillier.
bit. Brock
I think he's largely still there.
Really, the top performers for the Islanders right now in the forward group are Nelson, Lee, Beauvillier, and Pajot, Palmieri, and Bailey. And those are two units that are rolled out pretty regularly. Then there's Parise, who's playing exceptionally well. Barzell, who is trying to make it through the rest of the season, and Wallstrom, who's trying to figure it out. So, and then there's the fourth line, who is limping through the rest of this season. But Another win tonight for the Islanders against a playoff bound team. That's not to say that there's been a lot of them. The record against playoff bound teams this season is 9-23-2. 8 of the last 10 games after tonight are against playoff bound teams. Again, like I said, they've been better as of late. I think they only had like 2 wins before January against playoff bound teams. And actually, I should say before like March against playoff bound teams. And more recently, they've been winning despite still having a losing record against those teams. But how important is this late stretch of games? Is this going to determine who or how much something does or does not happen in this offseason? I know that we said that we're going to be evaluating the roster, but in terms of looking at the games that we're playing against or the Islanders are playing against playoff bound teams, are these next 8 of 10 games going to really help determine what the Islanders do this offseason? Because there's been talk of, oh, they're just going to run it back because look how well they're doing now. But when you really zoom the lens in a little more, you see that yes, they're playing well, but look at who they're playing well against.
And I'm in that camp of who are they playing well against, and can they do it consistently?
Right.
And that's kind of the problem. I think thinking about the offseason a little bit more holistically, it's not just a roster and personnel thing. You kind of have to look at it like there's individual play, who's really giving effort, who's putting themselves in the right position, who can we put around them, that kind of thing. Then there's again the units of play. Okay, who can we play with who's playing well together, blah blah blah. Like there's individual play, then there's lines, and then you got to really think about the systems. What's working and what's not on the whole. And I know we speak a lot about the offenses. I think it's a little bit easier. There aren't a lot of options to kind of mess around with on defense, but that's going to get a bit of an overhaul potentially next year as well.
Mhm.
Whether that's continuing to have Green there and adding Salo and they switch, you're going to need somebody next to Dobson. Maybe Andy Green doesn't come back. He's, to our knowledge, doesn't have a contract. I think it's safe to operate under the assumption that he's back at least as the 7th D man. I don't know that there's any point in, trying to convince ourselves that might not happen. He's played well. He's not the problem. Should he be an every night guy now? He's starting to show signs. And on one of the goals tonight, you definitely
Yep.
saw that. Kapanen to
He
the
got beat
outside.
bad by Kapanen.
And, did he do what he needed to do for let's call it three seasons? He's been here, I feel like that long, right? Am I making that up? Including the playoffs? Absolutely. He's just not an every night guy anymore. Not
No.
and for a while he outplayed a guy like Chara, night in, night out, and Chara looks okay. I mean, again, he's a ghost out there, and that's fine. He's not making a whole bunch of mistakes. He's not contributing offensively, all the time. Neither is Green, but he's doing what he needs to do out there. He's doing what he needs to be, what he's asked to do anyway. And you know what? At this point, that's fine. But I think you're looking at a lot of different things of this offseason, not just individual play. So when you're going against these really good teams, you're comparing, do our systems still work? Does the goalie rotation still work? Like, what do we got to do there? How are we deploying people? Are we line matching? Are we rolling? What are different players look like? I think there's a lot they're going to be looking at on a lot of different levels from different vantage points the
Yeah.
rest of the season. So I don't think it's as simple as like, are they winning games? I think there are going to be things that we straight up don't understand because we're not even someone's water boy in the NHL. So I think there's going to be some stuff that we like don't get, and that's where I wonder what's going to happen.
Yeah.
There's going to be systems changes or whatever.
I don't know. I feel like as long as Barry Trotz is behind the bench, that's the system they're going to run with. However, I don't know that that means this offseason, they just say to themselves, "Oh, we didn't make any moves at the deadline because we're running it back with this team." Will the majority of them be back? Probably. Do
Oh
I
yeah, they
think
can't. They don't have the
they don't have the
ability.
flexibility?
Yeah, they don't have the
Right.
flexibility. It's
But do I think that that means that they're handicapped to making big moves where they bring in maybe a first line scorer or a second pairing defenseman that's pretty necessary at this point? Or probably what's the most important piece right now to find is a long term partner for Noah Dobson. These are the things that we're probably going to see happen, and it's probably also going to cost the Islanders something that might make you uncomfortable. And if that's Anthony Beauvillier or whether it's not, um, it could happen. So I listen. You could be right. It could be a systems thing. I'm not convinced of that. I do think that the
no, you didn't hear
that
you didn't hear me. It's a lot of different things. What I said is it's not just a personnel
oh no, I
thing
know.
that
No, no, I know.
they're doing in the off season. It's got to be a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, no. In my spiel, I was gonna go on and say or a bunch of other stuff, but
Yeah, I just think it's a comprehensive look at this
oh
team.
yeah,
They
a
need
hundred
to
percent has
it's
to
all
be.
on a lot of different levels. And fellow hockey writer Mike Fink asked about Grant Hutton and his opportunity. Look, if they don't bring Andy Green back, I don't know why Hutton isn't the seventh defender that that gets games. Um, I think he's only in there right now because of Mayfield, and if that means Mayfield is uh, traded for some reason because they trust Hutton in the same spot, if he's cheap enough to be there and you trust him, I guess that's fine. Depends on how he's deployed and who you want to put next to him.
I,
I'm
I
under the impression that Mayfield in that spot is better if you're going to roll Green Sallow out there. Um, but I could be wrong. I really that third pair is a complete mystery to me, with or without Mayfield.
I like the question, considering the Islanders are looking ahead. Is Grant Hutton making a case to stay on the defense? If not, should the Islanders be searching for a young defenseman to step up from Bridgeport? Um, Look, I think that Grant Hutton has actually played very well since he's been up playing, in what is it now, 5, 6 games. Is the sample size big enough to determine should he be a permanent solution? No. But I do think that he definitely has played his way into consideration for at least the seventh spot next season. There's no reason why he probably can't fill in every third game if he has to. I think that that third pair is likely to be something like Sallow Mayfield, with the second pair being, still Dobson and whoever they find to fill in on that left side. But should they be looking for a young guy in Bridgeport, I think the expectation is that there is a guy in Bridgeport right now who will be part of the everyday mix come October in Robin Sallow. That's the expectation. Obviously, things change. Um, so we'll see how that plays out. But regarding Grant Hutton, yeah, I don't see why he can't at least be on the everyday roster as the seventh defenseman next season. I really like the way he's played in the past 5 or 6 games. We will see what happens with that. Earlier in the show, I did see a question from our one of our regular listeners, Andre, and he had asked, guys, any chance Aturatu gets a game with the Islanders? Eventually, yes, but not this season, I don't believe. Our good friend Mitch Anderson with Eyes on Isles, and the brainchild of Deckhands. Actually, it's actually his. He does Deckhands on YouTube. Check that out. Talking about Islanders prospects. Did a little bit of digging, and he did say that the plan is for Aturatu to come over to North America, and start getting prepared for the North American game. That's likely going to be with the Bridgeport Islanders for the remainder of their season. And if they get into the playoffs, which, in my opinion, would be good value for Aturatu so he can get some playoff atmosphere,
Yeah, we talked
more
about that
playoff
last week.
atmosphere type of game, under his belt, because he had a short stint of that in Liga. He went through a bit of a learning curve there, and I know he didn't perform exceptionally well, so it might be good to get another shot at some playoff type atmosphere for him with the Bridgeport Islanders. I think that's about it for us tonight, pal.
Yeah. Andre had one last question. I haven't heard this player before.
Oh, speaking of players, any idea if the Islanders are in on Ben Myers? I don't have any knowledge on that. I could look into it, maybe tweet it out. Post show, maybe something tomorrow. I could do a little bit of digging on Ben Myers. But no, I haven't heard anything as of late.
Another NCAA player.
Yeah, I know he's an NCAA player. I just haven't heard anything regarding that.
No.
The Bridgeport Islanders did sign somebody today to an ATO, but it's just a tryout, so no guarantees there with him. Looking for the player's name now, Kobe Bender, forward, pretty big forward, 6'1", 200 pounds. I think he scored like a career high 30 something points in the NCAA, which is no slouch there. So, but yeah, I think that's it for us tonight, pal. What do you think?
I agree.
All right, we want to say thank you to DraftKings. Use that THPN promo code with DraftKings. And we want to say thank you to the Hockey Podcast Network, Fix, and of course, all of you, our listeners. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to or watch the show. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Aspen Hockey. And you can find my work at the Fourth Period and John's work at the Hockey Writers. Make sure to check out Fix, an excellent curated Islanders newsletter. It'll be in your inboxes tomorrow morning with a recap of today's events. And until next time, everybody, let's go Islanders.